Hello and welcome back to the Pet Business Wellbeing Podcast with me, Nathan Dunleavy. This is the podcast where we talk about the realities of running a pet business, the highs, the challenges, and most importantly, how to look after your wellbeing whilst you do it. Because running a business should support your life, not consume it. Hello everyone, welcome back to the podcast. An extra special episode today, as it is a solo episode with just me talking. I do struggle with the solo episodes. I don't know what it is. I struggle recording, just doing them on my own and having notes to refer to or remembering stuff. And I much prefer interviewing a guest speaker, but I'm just coming on to do a solo episode today because we did part one last week where I was interviewed by the amazing Amanda, and now this is part two. And this is all going to be about my story and how I set up my business or businesses. So I hope that it will help or inspire others that may want to set up their business or that are struggling in their business. And also just to tie it in with the Pet Pro Reset experience, which is starting tomorrow, Sunday, the 21st of June at 7 p.m. So that's 5 days. It's a free experience and I'm so excited to be hosting it. It's the first time I've ever done anything like it before. So we're going to have daily teachings from me over 4 days. The middle day 3 will be like a rest, pause and reset day, like an integration day. And the other evenings I'm going to be coming on live and doing a sort of teaching session, a presentation. And those recordings will be uploaded as well. So if you haven't already registered, please do register. And like I said, it's the first time I've done anything like it before. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, feeling a little bit burnt out, struggling with boundaries, you just need to have some breathing space, please do come along to the Pet Pro Reset experience. I will put the link to register in the show notes. And yeah, this kind of ties in with me doing the solo episode and just talking all about my story. Okay, so that's another dog that's just jumped up on my lap. So I've got 2 of them. Normally I would have my SA dog with me, but I've got 2 of the other poodles and they are like Velcro dogs. So they're both now wanting to sit in my lap. So we'll just wait for them to get comfy. Yeah, so rewinding back really to when I was 14 years old, I did my work experience in 2 banks. I did a week with HSBC. So this is if you're in the UK, these bank names will be familiar. I did a week with HSBC and then a week with Barclays Bank. And then I was sitting my GCSEs, hadn't quite turned 16 because I was one of those that were the youngest in my year. So I was due to leave school in 2000. Taken my exams in the summer of that year and I was all set to go to college. I didn't know what route I was going to go down. I did look at going, because I did home economics as GCSE, I did look at going down the route of becoming a chef, and I looked going to a college that kind of did a vocation course based around becoming a chef. And then I was looking at A levels and I was predicted really good GCSE grades, but I found the whole experience really stressful. I didn't know whether I wanted to put myself through going to college. And back then you had to do AS levels. So it was AS levels the first year, and then you would then go on to do an A level for the second year. Whereas if I did the chef course, that was like a BTEC course. I don't know what happened, but I did stay in touch with the manager that I did the work experience with at Barclays, and I preferred the work experience at Barclays over HSBC. But I stayed in touch, and for whatever reason, we got chatting and she offered me a job. And that was going to be as a cashier. So a lot of the banks are closing now in the UK. But it was as a cashier where you go in, you pay your bills, you pay money in, you get money out. But first of all, I had to work in the back office on a document handler machine, and it was processing all the checks that came into the bank. So I was out the back and really didn't enjoy that because I enjoyed being out the front and meeting people. But anyway, you had to start off there to give yourself like an understanding of how the banking systems work. So I think I stayed out the back on the machine for 3 to 6 months. And then I then became a cashier. And then I think it was within sort of 6 to 9 months, I was promoted to personal banker. And that's the person where you go into the bank and you see a person sat on a desk and you open up bank accounts, you apply for loans, you do insurance products and all that bits and pieces. And I was really young, very young for my age to be a personal banker. And then I looked at, funny enough, the business side of the bank, business banking. And I decided to apply to work in the business banking department. And that's when I became a MSB, back in those days, manager of startup and small businesses. So I basically helped new startup small business customers open their bank account, and then had a portfolio of existing small business customers that had already been running their businesses, say, for a year or so. And I was actually the youngest small business manager of the South at 17 years of age. And yeah, I was doing that for quite a while. I managed to save up lots of money and I bought my first property at 18 years of age. So that was a really big achievement. And I was in business banking, but for some reason, I found the pull to go back to personal banking because I was then going to look to train to be a branch manager. And I then went back as a personal banker, then did some training to become a branch manager and an assistant branch manager role, really, or senior personal banker. Decided to do some training. There was a lot of politics back in those days. There still probably is when you're working in a corporate environment. And for whatever reason, I didn't end up staying in personal banking. I actually went back to business banking, but this time I went to corporate banking. And that is where I did some lending exams. They were called commercial banking lending exams. I was a relationship support manager. And within that, once you did the banking exams, you then got a promotion. So I was promoted and I was with the corporate banking department for quite a while. The bank always used to do a lot of restructuring. So then, and segmentation. So then I was moved back to business banking. I then saw a position come up as a team leader in the complaints department, but it was when we were dealing with all the PPI payouts. So if you remember payment protection insurance, everyone was missold these insurance policies. And put my hands up, when I was a personal banker, I did sell payment protection insurance with the loans, but I can hand on heart say that I never missold it to anyone. I didn't make them have it. I didn't force it upon them. I went through a statement of demands and needs process, and if it came out it was recommended, I then put the option to the client, and it was a choice. You could have the loan with or without the PPI, and never unwillingly missold that to them. It was always their decision whether they wanted to take the insurance out of the loan. But anyway, I found myself then going for a secondment as a team leader in the complaints department that was dealing with the final redress, the final stage of the complaints, where we were paying out all these refunds to customers and sending out the final complaint letter and the checks, the refunds. And we're talking thousands and thousands of pounds we were sending out as checks. I think one of the biggest complaint claims that we sent out a check for was about 40,000. So that's where it gave me experience of dealing with the complaint side, but also running a team. And I had a team of about 12 different complaint handlers, and they ranged from really young to 40s, 50s year old members of staff, and obviously all different sort of personalities and characters. And basically you were targeted to get the team's productivity increase, and I very successfully got the team's overall productivity increased to where it needed to be, from an output of 70% to of over 90. My secondment then ended when I went back into my role as relationship support manager. So it was that point where I was assisting what you call a relationship director. We had a portfolio of about 100 to 150 clients, and they had a turnover between sort of £2 to £5 million. So these were more bigger established businesses. And I was like a glorified PA to the relationship director, but I assist the relationship director in managing the portfolio. I was dealing with booking appointments. I'd go out and visit the clients, lending applications. I helped assist with those, promoting the bank's products again, management of the relationship director's diary, booking appointments, as I say, liaising with like networking. I used to go to networking events, so that's where I discovered my love for networking. And then liaising with different sort of parts of the bank, payment, merchant services, so Barclaycard merchant services to take payments, Barclaycards to offer charge cards, insurance again. So I liaised with all the different departments of the bank. And I was doing that for a while. And it was approaching my 30th birthday, and I'm based in Southampton now, and I kind of had this kind of urge to move to London. And I was applying for all these jobs in London, but for whatever reason, I just wasn't getting them. And I didn't really want to carry on being a relationship support manager. I liked managing my own team. So I was applying for all these roles within London, but unfortunately I wasn't successful in getting a position. And I don't know what made me decide, but I have family in Australia, in Perth. And now I've got like friends, one of my best friends is in Sydney. But I don't know what made me decide, but I ended up applying for a working holiday visa and decided that I was going to move to Australia for a year. So I was going to go and stay with my cousin and his family. I put my flat on the market, I sold my car, resigned from my job and got some money together. And then, decided I was off to Australia. Arrived in Australia within 2 weeks. I then met my now husband, Mark. Hadn't had any intention of going over to Australia to meet a man or to meet anyone. I was just going almost to find myself, running away from whatever was going on back in the UK. But now I look back, I was running towards my future, and that future was with Mark. And he was recovering from cancer. He had a really bad time of Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he was over there recovering just because of the weather and a better quality of life. And as I say, I ended up doing about 6 months in Australia. I didn't stay for the full year. I tried applying for loads of jobs whilst I was in Perth, but they all said I was overqualified, obviously given my banking and business banking background. And I just couldn't even get a job in a supermarket stacking shelves. And in Perth, like, if you're a POM, like an English person, they were more for the Australians. And in Perth, you're just stuck out in the middle of nowhere. Whereas on the East Coast, that's where you've got obviously Brisbane and Queensland and Sydney and Melbourne and Canberra. But anyway, I did a little bit of traveling, ended up going to Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra, went to the Gold Coast and Brisbane, ended up going to Bali with Mark. Mark came back to the UK in February. I then stayed on till the end of March. And I knew that when we were moving back to the UK that I didn't want to necessarily move back to Southampton. And because Mark was from Blackburn and originally had lived in Manchester for 12 years previously, we then decided that as a couple we would settle in Manchester, and we rented a house in Manchester. We also needed jobs. Mark's background prior to going into Australia and being ill was insolvency, dealing with people's IVAs and debt management plans. Prior to that, he did start his career in travel, which I'll come back to in a minute. So we both found ourselves in insolvency. It was really good money for what we were doing, really good bonuses. It was backing that corporate environment again. And I was really spoiled with working with Barclays because it's a proper sort of corporate company, and then you work for these sort of smaller companies. I'd been really spoiled in terms of how I was treated and the processes and all that stuff that comes with working in a corporate job. But I wasn't really happy. It was soul destroying. Like I said, we were earning good money, but I just wasn't happy in that working environment. We then very luckily bought a house in Bolton, couldn't quite afford a house in Manchester. So we bought in Bolton, literally just outside of Manchester, bought our first house together. Lovely, lovely house, but I still wasn't quite happy. And then for whatever reason, I applied for a job in cruise sales for a cruise sales company. And what drew me to this job was that they had an office in Southampton. So this company were based in Chorley in Lancashire, but they had an office in Southampton. And my longer term plan was that I probably would look to move back to Southampton. But if I could do it with a job, that was even better, because I just wasn't happy. I wasn't settled living in Bolton. Even though I loved my house and I had some really amazing friends there and we had Mark's family, I really missed my own family and friends. But anyway, got this job, and it was a really bizarre recruitment process. There was tons of people that went there for this recruitment day, and there was ex-travel agents, ex-cabin crew, and literally I didn't think I stood a chance in getting a job. Anyway, I successfully got through all the different stages and got this job as a cruise sales consultant, and that's where it sparked my love for travel. I'd already travelled, obviously, anyway, going to Australia, and had quite a few amazing holidays prior to moving to Australia and meeting Mark. But yeah, fell into this job as well as a cruise sales consultant. I ended up getting Mark a job there as well, but he didn't have to go through the whole same recruitment process that I did. He just had a one-to-one interview, which suited him better. But yeah, and then it was kind of going well. I thought it was going well. But for whatever reason, I didn't pass my probation, but the way it was handled wasn't handled properly. And I ended up putting in I don't know if it was a grievance or I appealed the decision, but I managed to get my job back, and me and Mark both were still working there. But then we decided to move to Southampton, and for me to move home back to Southampton because I wasn't happy up in Bolton. We were getting a transfer with the company down to their Southampton office, and that was all happening. But we then got poached by one of their competitors who also had an office near Portsmouth. So we ended up moving down, getting poached by that company, and got an apartment in Southampton. We're working for that company. And then we both were let go from that job on the same day. So we'd just taken on this really expensive apartment, but we'd both lost our job on the same day. Mark was really lucky in that the first job he applied for was for a new travel agent. They were new to Southampton. They were opening a high street store on Southampton High Street. So he was very successful in getting a job straight away. I decided that because I couldn't deal with working for these companies anymore, and because I was spoiled during my career at Barclays and then being such an amazing company to work for, I just couldn't put myself through working for a smaller company in the way I'd been treated by those two cruise sales companies. And I decided on that very day that I was going to set up two businesses. Now, I don't know what started it, but when we were living up in Bolton, I was toying with the idea of setting up a pet care company, but I was going to be doing it around my shifts for the cruise sales company. And yeah, I don't know how it all came about, but I had this idea of launching this pet care company, and it was called BCM Pet Services, which stood for Bella, Coco and Milo. And that's my three chihuahuas, Bella, Coco and Milo. They were my first three dogs, and I decided to set up this pet care company called BCM Pet Services. But obviously moved to Southampton, and a really good friend at the time had a website called Dog Walker Southampton. And he said the website wasn't being used by anyone, but it was still ranking really well in Google, and it was still receiving inquiries. And did I want to take over the website? And I was like, yeah, I jumped at the chance. So that's when I then became Dog Walker Southampton. But I also decided to set up an independent travel agency as well. So I set up a business called The Holiday Village with Nathan Dunleavy. I think it was Nathan's Holiday Village, or it was The Holiday Village with Nathan Dunleavy. And that was part of a wider company called the Travel Village Group, who were part of Co-op Mid-Counties Travel Consortium. And yeah, I was running two businesses basically. I had my travel business and then my dog walking business. I had no money. I literally had about £1,000 that I managed to get from the company that let me go. I ended up buying my friend's BMW for about £850. I bought some branded t-shirts that said Dog Walker Southampton. I invested in some business cards, some leaflets, and some magnetic signs to slap on the doors of the BMW. And I became a solo dog walker, and I was known in the area as a solo dog walker. I was taking on all the dogs that wouldn't or couldn't go out on group walks and that none of the other dog walkers wanted. So they were referring all those dogs to me. And obviously they happen to be the reactive dogs, in inverted commas, the more challenging dogs, the spicy dogs, the sensitive dogs, the anxious, the nervous dogs, bless them, that couldn't go out on group walks. And I was a solo dog walker, and it gave me such a great solid foundation and understanding and handling of these types of dogs. And and I did that for a while, as well as running my travel business. And I was working ridiculous hours. I was up till early hours of the morning dealing with people's holiday quotes. I'd be out walking a solo dog on lead, and I'd be on my phone dealing with people's travel inquiries and speaking and emailing to suppliers and getting quotes for people's holidays. And people used to say to me, "Oh, you need to choose which business you're going to go with. You need to decide on one." And I'm very much a bit of a rebel. You probably know this about me already now, that I'm a bit of a rebel. I make up the rules. I don't follow a rule book. If anything, I've teared up the rule book and I've made my own rules. But no one was going to tell me that I had to choose both of my businesses, because they were both my passion. But then COVID hit and the decision was taken out of my hand. And I then started to wind up the travel business and decided to go with the dog walking business. But obviously Boris happened and we had to shut down for about 2.5 weeks. We weren't allowed to go into people's houses and stuff. And it was crazy because I was always used to work, and I've got a really strong work ethic, and I was always busy running both businesses, always working. And then all of a sudden I got told I couldn't work. I pretty much lost my business overnight because every client was at home. I had one client that decided to stay on for a retainer initially, and I literally lost my business overnight. But I then decided in those 2.5 weeks to use that time to my advantage. I had a bounce back loan from the government, and I invested those funds into retraining as a dog trainer. I decided to rebrand. I decided to then take on a speciality of separation anxiety, and I did Julie Naismith's Pro Behaviour Consultant course, the SA Pro course, because my own dog started showing signs of separation anxiety. And I retrained and I did all the courses I could during that period, and I rebranded from Dog Walker Southampton to Nathan's Paw Trails. Nathan's Paw Trails was officially born. And I thought I was busy before lockdown, but obviously everyone decided to get dogs in lockdown. And it's great because they were at home, but then I didn't think they foresaw when they had to then go back into the office, and then all these dogs suddenly couldn't cope. So that's why I decided to do the speciality as a behaviour consultant in SA, because all these dogs were going to suddenly struggle with their caregivers going back to work. So I wanted to become certified in that because I knew what it was like with my own dog, and I wanted to help others. And I was really busy initially with SA work, and it was obviously work that not all behaviourists necessarily wanted to take on. I didn't want to forget about all my solo dog walking clients either, so I ended up taking on my first team member so I could hand over those solo dog walking clients to them. And from Nathan's Paw Trails, Nathan's Paw Training was born. So that was another arm of the business. We were then getting requests for kitty check-ins and pet sitting and small animal care. So then Nathan's Paw Care was born. So we had the Nathan's Paw Trails group of companies. You then had Paw Care, which was pet sitting, kitty check-ins, bunny poppins, and eventually home boarding. You then had Nathan's Paw Training, and I was a qualified dog trainer, and I was doing puppy training one-to-ones. I was doing puppy training classes, canine hoopers classes, and then doing my SA behaviour work, which was all done online. So initially, the 2 members of staff I had were employees and they came on as PAYE, but then that kind of model didn't work right for the business. So I then made them self-employed and they became subcontractors, and that was better for them and the business. And I had about 8 subcontractors at one point, and obviously managing lots of different personalities. And it takes one bad apple to upset the apple cart, and unfortunately there was a lot of personalities there and it was harder to manage. So I decided to, after taking 6 months out from the business on a bit of a sabbatical, then came back into the business and decided to condense it down, let go some clients, let go some of the self-employed subcontractors, and we were then a much smaller team. And I decided to go back to the dog walking side of the business. And I've now got 2 dog walkers that also act as pet sitters, and one of them is a licensed home boarder. And then I've got a dog trainer who I subcontract work out to. And if I get any inquiries, I send them on to her if it's like stuff that I don't deal with. If it's a puppy, then I'll still do one-to-one puppy work, or I'd still do dog training for my existing walking clients if they're needing help with loose leash walking or loose lead walking, recall, focus, mat settle work and stuff like that. And I haven't done any SA work for about 18 months now. Is the last time I took on an SA client, but I still do enjoy that work, and that is something that I want to look to start promoting again, because I'm trying to build obviously a more online business as well, because eventually I won't be able to do dog walking forever, and I want to have my full-time gig to be like an online business, and whatever that looks like, whatever that feeds into that. But obviously I'll come on to that in a minute. And yeah, so I do dog walking now Monday to Thursday, do a couple of walks a day, got a much smaller team. And yeah, a couple of years ago, I was having mentoring by the amazing Helen Motteram, and she said that you should look to offer mentoring to new startup dog walkers, because there isn't anyone offering that at the moment, and it's a really under-supported and underrepresented role within the industry. And she was like, you should offer some sort of mentoring to new dog walkers. Because I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, I've got experience of starting up myself as a solo dog walker, then adding additional services, group walks, and then offering training, offering behaviour consultation, offering pet sitting, kind of had all that experience, and obviously taken on team members and PAYE versus self-employed, subcontractors. So yeah, that's when the dog walking business mentoring business was formed a couple of years ago. And that was my first mentoring business. And it took a little while to get that off the ground, and consistently promoting that for about 18 months until the inquiries started coming in. And then I started helping new startup dog walkers. And it was great, because these new dog walkers that were coming into the industry, they were looking for help, because basically everyone or anyone can suddenly start up and become a dog walker, and they don't realize how hard it is. There's so much you have to consider. People think it's easy, and it's not, and oh, you're just a dog walker. But there's so much that's involved with it. And it was great that these new people that were coming into the industry, that they were searching for a business mentor, because they wanted to get it set up correctly from the outset. And I'm not saying that the way that I mentor is the right way, because we're still in an unregulated industry, but I just use the framework that I've used and my business banking background and running multiple businesses as a framework in the mentoring that I do. And I've got first-hand experience of what it takes and what it's like, and I've been doing it over 8 years now. So I put all that into my mentoring. I was helping new startup dog walkers. I was helping dog walkers that wanted to add on additional services, say like training or pet sitting. And then I was also helping dog walkers that had been running for about a year, 18 months, and they wanted to look to grow and take on their first team members. So that was that. And then that all started running really well. And then I was having further mentoring last summer, because I'm a firm believer in investing in my own mentoring. If I'm going to be giving mentoring to others, I want to be able to be the best version I can be for my mentees. And I was having further mentoring last summer from Andrew Howe. And it was all about basically getting to the root of what my professional presence was and what sort of message I was putting out into the industry. And he said, what you bring to your business mentoring with your business acumen, your background in running multiple businesses, and your corporate and business banking background and experience, other pet professionals need that kind of support. And I think you should open up your mentoring to other pet professionals. And he said, unfortunately, there's been a lot of pet professionals that have been burnt by various business coaches or mentors, either pet business coaches or mentors, or ones that weren't in the industry. They've been burnt by high-ticketed and really expensive and pressurable business coaching, and that hasn't basically delivered, and they've been missold to, or whatever, for whatever reason. There's a lot of pet pros that have been burnt by coaches. There's a lot of pet pros that are burnt out, that are struggling with boundaries, overwhelm, mental health, imposter syndrome. He said, I think you should go in on a well-being stance because there isn't anyone that's offering that at the moment. And it was important for me not to forget the dog walkers. And I didn't want to rebrand from the Dog Walking Business Mentor because I still feel that dog walking is an undersupported and underrepresented role within our industry. And I didn't want to forget about the dog walkers. It's how I started and it's my heart. So it was then I decided that I would do an evolution. I would do an offshoot, an extension, a branch from that. And I then formed the Pet Business Wellbeing Mentor. And I'm not there to teach you to walk a dog, train a dog, groom a dog. I'm there to teach you the basics and the know-how of how to run a business, to support you in running a business, because a lot of people don't get into becoming a dog trainer or dog groomer to run a business. And there just isn't enough support out there to help you run a business. And like, you may be the best dog trainer, but you may be rubbish at running a business, and that's okay. And that's where you need the support. And that's where I come in with helping support you in running the business, but with a well-being angle, because we need to look after ourselves. You wouldn't run a car on empty with no fuel or oil, so you shouldn't run yourselves on empty. You need to be the best version of yourself to be able to give the best possible service to your customers and the dogs, basically. And if you're constantly feeling burnt out and not looking after yourself, you're not going to be able to help the customers to the best of your abilities, and the clients will respect you more if you look after yourself. So that's where the well-being stance comes from. And we look at overwhelm and boundaries and imposter syndrome, and your mental health and balance and all that, really. And I then launched the podcast, the Pet Business Wellbeing Podcast, which you're listening to or watching, hopefully. And I set up a free Facebook group, so the Pet Business Wellbeing Circle, and that's got over 300 members now. And I'm offering one-to-one mentoring. Been working with lots of lovely people this year already, but not everyone can always stretch to one-to-one mentoring, or they like a more group environment. So I then launched the Pet Business Wellbeing Circle Plus. So it's an extension of the free Facebook group. And obviously I've done the episode already that you hopefully watched or listened to, all about the Pet Business Wellbeing Circle and how that's come about. But it's an extension of the Facebook group. And you get 2 group mentoring sessions a month. There's a theme of the month and lots of different resources and digital resources there. There's a community off of Facebook, because us pet pros, we are very disconnected and isolated, and we do crave community. It can be very lonely. And a lot of people are getting fed up of Facebook now. It's very noisy, very political. So there is a community off of Facebook. There'll be theme of the month. There'll be guest speakers coming on every other month. And yeah, and that's how it's all come about, really, from my sort of local business of Nathan's Paw Trail to my online businesses that I'm building, the Dog Walking Business Mentor and now the Pet Business Wellbeing Mentor. They're my online mentoring businesses that I'm building. And then with the Pet Business Wellbeing Mentor, that's where the courses come into effect, and the membership is launching this week. And that's where I'm doing the free 5-day live immersive experience, the Pet Pro Reset experience. So what it does is it gives you a flavour of what it will be like to be in the membership. So we compress a whole month into 5 days, and then you have the 4 separate teaching sessions with me teaching and talking about a different subject. You have the middle day 3, which is the pause and reset day, an integration day, and then 2 further days of me teaching. And then during that 5 days, the cart will be open to join Circle Plus. And then it will close after the last teaching day, the 5th day. The cart will be open for 4 days, and then it will be closed. And then this is all my soft launch to my kind of warm existing audience from my Facebook group, my business and Facebook pages, and my email list. And then I'm going to have a full public launch in July, where I'll be using meta ads and things like that. So if you don't join in the soft launch, you can join in the public launch, and there'll be founding member offers available as well. So there's a founder member price. I've purposely kept it low because I want it to be affordable for everyone. So the founder member price will be available on the soft launch and then in the full public launch. But then after that, it won't be available. So that's the time to get in. The founder member price will be available for the whole time that you remain a member. There's going to be bonuses over the 5 days as well. So if you join on the first day, you get all access to all the fab bonuses that I've set up. But you'll also get those available in the full launch in July as well. So there's lots of lovely Brucey bonuses available. And then there'll be like a launch once a month. So the membership will only open once a month. So I will open it for a week in August. And I'm going to be holding my first webinar in August as well. And then it'll be opened once a month after. But the founder member prices and bonuses is only available for the soft launch and the full launch. So the soft launch starts tomorrow, if you're watching this, on Sunday, the 21st of June, 2026. And then the full public launch starts in July, a month later. I think it's the 19th. And the Pet Pro Reset experience starts tomorrow as well. So I hope you can join me for the Pet Pro Reset experience. I will put the link into the show notes. And then from there, you'll be able to join my new membership, the Pet Business Wellbeing Circle Plus. So that's a whistle-stop tour of my whole career from when I started my work experience at 14 years old at Barclays Bank to now being 41 years of age and running multiple pet care businesses as well as a travel business, and my whole career and how we've got to where I am now. And I hope my story has resonated with you. It's inspired you to set up your own business or to take your business to the next step. And if you need help and support with that in terms of a business mentor, hopefully what I've shared kind of inspires you or helps you or gives you that nudge to reach out and get support. And not everyone will be your cup of tea, and I will not be everyone's cup of tea, but hopefully from what you've watched and listened to today of my story, like I say, I might be your person, I might not, but it helps you decide that you might want some business mentoring, and I might be that person for you. Anyway, I'm getting a bit tongue twisted now. My mouth's really dry. I won't rabble on anymore. But I just want to say thank you for joining this solo episode. It's the longest solo episode I've done. And I find solo episodes really hard. So if you've stuck with me for this long, thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Pet Business Wellbeing Podcast. If you enjoyed today's chat, I'd love it if you could share this with a friend. Subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And please consider leaving me a review, as it really helps me reach more pet professionals who need this kind of support. Until next time, take care of yourself, look after your well-being, and remember, it's not about being perfect, it's about building a business you actually enjoy being in. Bye for now.